Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais offrir mes pensées aux 66 000 Canadiens qui ont perdu leur emploi dans le mois d'août. Ça s'ajoute à un autre 40 000 qui avaient perdu leur emploi le mois de juillet. Ça fait 100 000 personnes qui ont perdu leur emploi dans un été à cause de la crise d'emploi des libéraux. Évidemment, plusieurs parmi eux sont des jeunes. Des jeunes qui vivaient déjà l'enfer du marché immobilier des libéraux, après que les libéraux ont doublé le coût du logement. Ces gens-là avaient de la misère à payer leur loyer et à nourrir leur famille. Mais c'est des vraies personnes. C'est des papas qui sont retournés à leur maison pour dire à leurs enfants qu'il n'y a plus d'emploi et qu'ils vont probablement devoir vendre leur maison. C'est parmi les conséquences graves des décisions que M. Carney a prises depuis son arrivée au pouvoir. Il a promis qu'après 10 ans des libéraux que les choses allaient être différentes, mais en effet, les choses sont encore pires. Il a promis de créer des emplois. Mais depuis son arrivée au pouvoir, il y a bien plus que 100 000 plus de gens qui ont perdu leur emploi. Il a promis qu'il allait réduire le coût de la vie. Mais aujourd'hui, l'inflation alimentaire est plus élevée que ça a été quand M. Carney a pris le pouvoir. Encore, c'est pire le prix de nourriture aujourd'hui à cause de M. Carney qu'il y a 5 mois. Il a promis qu'il allait bâtir des choses. Vous souvenez-vous? Il allait bâtir très rapidement. Mais selon son agence immobilière, le gouvernement s'attend à ce que la construction de logements tombe de 13 % d'ici les prochaines 3 ans. Et il n'a même pas réussi à établir un bureau qui allait un jour fabriquer des maisons de haute technologie. Ça reste un rêve. Parlant des rêves, le Globe and Mail a annoncé aujourd'hui qu'il y a une liste de rêves. Pas une liste de projets, mais une liste de rêves. C'est des projets qui sont en train de possiblement considérer, donner à un bureau qui n'existe pas encore pour peut-être faire une décision pour que ces projets seraient peut-être bâtis un jour. C'est ça que M. Carney a accompli en termes de construction de projets. Il a dit qu'il allait contrôler les crimes, mais encore la criminalité est en hausse. On a vu des attaques hier épouvantables par quelqu'un qui était libéré encore sous caution à cause des lois des libéraux, que M. Carney a promis de changer, mais qui n'a pas changé, et les gens ont perdu la vie à cause de son inaction face aux lois libérales pro-criminelles. Il a promis qu'il allait dépenser moins, et on va aller investir plus. Mais gardons le fait, pas les promesses. Oublions les lettres qu'il a envoyées à ses ministres ou des promesses d'un jour d'avoir de l'austérité. Les dépenses ont augmenté de 8 % depuis son arrivée au pouvoir. Et selon les calculs des économistes, le déficit Carney va être 2 fois plus important que le déficit de Justin Trudeau. Pouvez-vous imaginer ça? Avoir un déficit 2 fois plus élevé que M. Trudeau, qui dépensait hors de contrôle. Et parlant de l'investissement, 63 milliards d'investissements a quitté le Canada pour aller aux autres pays depuis, ça c'est net, depuis l'arrivée au pouvoir de M. Carney. Il a promis qu'on allait avoir l'économie, la meilleure économie dans le G7. Maintenant, on a la pire croissance économique parmi ces 7 pays. Les pires prix immobiliers parmi le G7. Le pire endettement des familles parmi le G7 et le deuxième pire taux de chômage parmi le G7. Donc, il a promis d'être le meilleur, il est le pire parmi le G7. C'est drôle qu'il continue de répéter la même promesse lorsqu'il est en train de briser ce promesse. Il a dit vouloir acheter Canada en même temps qu'il donne près d'1 milliard de dollars au gouvernement chinois pour produire des grands bateaux pour la Colombie-Britannique. En fait, il fait volte-face sur la question d'interdire des voitures à gaz. Moi, j'ai dit il y a longtemps que c'était une politique stupide et coûteuse qui allait nuire aux communautés rurales et tuer des emplois. Monsieur Carney, n'oublions pas, ce n'est pas une politique de Justin Trudeau qui l'a renversée. C'est lui qui avait écrit dans son livre qu'il était pour cette interdiction en 2030. Donc, il était encore plus sévère que M. Trudeau. Mais M. Carney, comme avec la taxe carbone, avait besoin d'avouer que les conservateurs avaient raison et que lui, il avait tort. Il a souvent tort. Il doit souvent avouer qu'il a tort sur beaucoup d'enjeux pour quelqu'un qui se décrit comme étant un expert. Mais il fait son recul de façon inadéquate en menaçant de ramener cette interdiction dans l'avenir, ce qui va décourager l'investissement dans le secteur automobile, nous revendiquant que l'interdiction sur les voitures de gaz soit renversée totalement et de façon permanente. C'est ça une façon d'aller. C'est un grand show de boucan pour M. Carney cet été. Beaucoup de choses, beaucoup de réunions, beaucoup de lettres envoyées, beaucoup d'annonces, mais rien accompli. Tout est pire. Chômage est pire, coût de la vie est pire, la crise de logement est pire, la croissance économique est pire, les tarifs que M. Carney a promis d'abolir en négociant une win avec Donald Trump, ça c'est pire. Tout est pire aujourd'hui qu'il y a 5 ans. Il faut que ça change. Donc, c'est pour ça que les conservateurs vont retourner à la Chambre des communes pour promouvoir une politique de l'espoir pour les Canadiens. Plus de pouvoir d'achat avec des taxes, des impôts et les dépenses vraiment réduits. Des rues sécuritaires en mettant les criminels en prison. Des frontières solides en appliquant les freins sur l'immigration libérale qui est hors de contrôle et une économie autosuffisante en adaptant la loi sur la souveraineté pour inviter la construction rapide à travers le pays des grands projets, y compris de logements que les gens peuvent acheter. C'est ça une vision pour le Canada qui est remplie de l'espoir. Et on est prêt à travailler avec M. Carney. Nous voulons que le gouvernement libéral vole les idées conservatrices. C'est les meilleures idées et on est là pour les produire et pour aider à les mettre en place. Parce que notre but, c'est de mettre le Canada d'abord et que chaque Canadien peut avoir une belle vie dans une maison abordable dans des communautés sécuritaires. Thank you very much, everyone. Before I get started, let me just share my thoughts and prayers with the 66,000 Canadians who lost their jobs last month. They're added to the 40,000 who lost their jobs the month before that. 100,000 Canadians lost their jobs this summer alone, having to go home to their families, their little kids, and sit around the dinner table saying they don't know how they're going to pay rent or groceries. They might have to move out of their home and find a smaller place. And this is a terrible time for them, especially our youth. Think of our youth who are already going through hell. Their housing costs had doubled during the time the Liberals have been in power. Food prices were unaffordable. Their streets were in danger. And now they wake up and find out they don't even have a job. And to add insult to injury, while we lost 105,000 jobs over the summer, there's 106,000 temporary foreign workers filling those jobs. Mark Carney is on track to let in a record number of temporary foreign workers this year because he says the corporate lobbyists tell him they want to keep wages low and their profits high. Once again, he sides with the wealthy, liberal corporate lobbyists rather than the hardworking Canadians who want to put in a day's work. And, you know, this compounds the cost of living crisis. Let's compare everything to what Mr. Carney promised. He promised that he was going to make Canada more affordable. Yet food prices are now rising faster than they were when Mr. Carney took office. He promised that he was going to reverse Liberal crime policies, and yet 5 months into his term, he's done absolutely nothing, and crime rages out of control. Just yesterday, another horrific attack, this time on First Nations people, by someone who is once again, out on bail because Mark Carney gave himself a summer off instead of reversing the Liberal laws. He said he would build at a pace once thought unimaginable because we were in an existential crisis. What has he built? Let's start with housing. He says that one day he will set up an office, and this office is going to do things that will one day mean that houses get built. This office still doesn't exist after 5 months of his government, and it hasn't obviously built a single home. Meanwhile, the housing crisis worsens from just being too expensive to being impossible to build, with his own housing agency saying housing construction will be down by 13% over the next several years. And then the national projects we were promised. We're 5 months in. He has not approved a single national project. In fact, he doesn't even have a list of projects he's considering approving. Today, we got the Dream List published in the Globe and Mail. This is, to be clear, not a list of projects Mark Carney supports. It's a list of projects that he wants to potentially consider looking at, and potentially referring to an office that isn't even yet set up, that might one day decide to approve them, and that after that, they might one day begin construction. But so far, absolutely nothing is getting built. And then we have his promise that he would spend less and invest more. Well, spending is up 8%, with most of the new money going to bureaucracy and consultants, while investment is fleeing our country, with a record $63 billion of investment leaving Canada in the 5 months that Mark Carney has been Prime Minister, and our economy is cratering. In fact, after Mr. Carney promised we'd have the best economy in the G7, what do you know? The latest quarterly data, we have the lowest economic growth in the G7. That adds to the second highest unemployment in the G7, the worst housing costs in the G7, and the most household debt in the G7. Those are the results, not the rhetoric. He said today he was going to buy Canada, but in fact he's giving $1 billion loan to buy Chinese-made ships so that our workers don't get that work. He is doing exactly the opposite of what he says. And today he's flip-flopped. After being a passionate advocate for banning gas-powered vehicles, calling for them to be banned by 2030 in his book, Values, which, by the way, was much more aggressive than Trudeau's plan, to ban them in 2035, he's finally admitted that the Conservatives were right, just like we were right on the carbon tax. But he's doing a clumsy retreat, saying that he's going to delay this mandate. So now, businesses who would otherwise consider investing in automaking here in Canada will have to put that investment on hold while Mark Carney dithers for another year to try and figure out how he can ban people from putting gas and diesel in their trucks and cars. Mark Carney can't even get his flip-flops right. But this really has been, as I said yesterday, the Seinfeld summer for Mark Carney, a big show about nothing. You know, I think specifically about George Costanza. You remember George Costanza? He was a legend. George Costanza had this great episode where he had this fancy, high-paying job with a corner office, and he didn't do any work, like literally none, but he wanted to look busy. So he would storm up and down the hallways carrying file folders. He would leave the lights on in his car in front of the office building on the weekend, even though he wasn't there. He would yell into the phone, even though no one was on the other end of the line. And they kept paying him because he looked so busy. I have to admit, Mark Carney has looked really busy this summer. He's been flying off to Europe to sign declarations of intent that actually mean absolutely nothing. He's been holding roundtables with other politicians. You've seen politicians patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves on all the excellent meetings they've been holding. There have been letters written to ministers that then get leaked to media and are reported with great fanfare on front pages everywhere. My goodness, he's almost as busy and as useless as George Costanza. It has been a big show about nothing. Nothing is getting done under Mark Carney. Everything is getting worse. The American tariffs, which he promised to get rid of by negotiating a win, they're worse. housing crisis is worse. Food inflation is worse. Crime is worse. Unemployment is worse. Everything has been worse under Mark Carney. But we're offering him some help. Conservatives are willing to work with any member of any party to turn things around for this country. Our priorities for the fall session are stronger take-home pay with lower taxes and lower inflation, securing our borders by ending out-of-control liberal immigration, securing our streets by locking up violent criminals, and a self-reliant Canada by opening this country up for business with a National Sovereignty Act that will rapidly approve pipelines, mines, LNG plants, export terminals built by the private sector without tax dollars that make money rather than take money. That's how we will make our economy strong, self-reliant, and stand on its own 2 feet. And that is how we will make this a country again where anyone who wants a job can find one. They can get a home, affordable food, meat and potatoes on the table, and a safe neighborhood with a nice Canadian flag hanging from the front porch. That's what we're working for. Let's make it happen.
Parliament is coming back in just a few days. What is going to be your strategy to go vis-a-vis Mark Carney? And do you think this honeymoon period with the Liberals is going to last?
Well, my strategy is to focus on putting paychecks in Canadians' pockets, putting criminals in jail, slamming the brakes on liberal immigration, getting shovels in the ground, and getting our country back on its feet. And simply pointing out that with Mark Carney, it's been all show business and no real business. He's gotten absolutely nothing done this summer other than shuffle a lot of papers and hold a lot of meetings while Canadians lose their jobs, can't afford food, and are unable to buy homes. And we will be holding him accountable for that. But, you know, we're also going to not just oppose, but propose great ideas to solve these problems so that we can make this a country, once again, where hard work is possible, that it pays off, and everyone can have an affordable, safe future.
You mentioned the list of projects. It includes
the dream list.
It includes a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, which you've been advocating. What do you make of that inclusion?
Okay, so to be clear, what is this list? Is this the list of things he's going to build? Is this the list of that this office is reviewing? What is this list? It's a dream list. Like we can't even. So what he said and what he's leaked to the Globe is that somebody put together a list of projects that some people who are not in the government would like to see built, that one day Mark Carney's future office will examine and consider possibly deciding on. That's what we're dealing with here. So despite the blazing headlines about a list, what this is a dream list that does not exist anywhere in reality. Mr. Carney, on the question of a pipeline to the Pacific, of course I support it. If I'd been elected Prime Minister on April 28th, construction would be underway right now on that project. And if you question that, I'll tell you how. We already had an approved project to go from Hardisty, Alberta to Kitimat. The route, the pathway is already there. 80% of First Nations already endorsed the project. Why not get building? What's there to study? We already know that there's 2 billion people in Asia that want to buy that energy. So it's a no-brainer, and it would have been under construction today. Well, it would have been under construction 10 years ago had Trudeau not killed it, and it would be under construction if I had been chosen. Of course, this was the subject of a very big disagreement Mr. Carney and I had at the industry committee before we were both leaders. We had a big debate about it. He said he was against the Northern Gateway pipeline. I said I was for, and he was simultaneously having his company invested in pipelines in Brazil and the Middle East at the time, but not wanting to build one in Canada. That's the difference. I want to build stuff here in this country.
Mais il n'y a pas eu beaucoup de détails qui ont été donnés de la part de
I'll be happy to come in.
Il y a eu beaucoup d'idées, mais il n'y a pas eu beaucoup de détails qui ont été donnés de la part de Mark Carney sur la façon dont on veut se rendre plus dépendant de l'économie américaine. En même temps, il y a beaucoup de choses que le gouvernement promet de faire et qui vont durer longtemps. Ma question à vous, c'est quel message s'envoie sur l'état des négociations avec les États-Unis?
Donc, vous avez dit qu'il n'y a pas eu beaucoup de détails sur le plan économique ou sur les négociations?
Les deux.
OK. M. Carney nous a dit qu'il fallait agir avec une rapidité sans précédent dans des élections. Mais ça fait 5 mois, il n'y a même pas un seul projet qu'il a identifié vouloir bâtir. Il n'y a aucun permis de construction pour un grand projet national. Ça fait presque un demi-an depuis qu'il est au pouvoir. Rien ne se produit, il n'y a aucun résultat. M. Carney montre une grande faiblesse face aux États-Unis et c'est pour ça que je pense qu'il a été forcé de faire des grandes concessions l'une après l'autre sans avoir aucun gain pour le Canada. Il a aussi promis, oublions, on est tous d'accord que c'est pas facile de gérer Trump. C'est pour ça que j'ai jamais dit, c'est pas moi qui a fait la promesse, c'est lui qui a dit pouvoir gérer Trump, négocier une victoire, mettre des coûts élevés. C'était ses promesses, mais il a lui-même abrogé toutes ses promesses par rapport à Trump. Il a fait totalement volte-face et il montre une grande faiblesse. C'est pour ça que dans les 5 mois de Mark Carney, les tarifs américains ont doublé sur le Canada. Donc, on est dans une pire position qu'on était quand il est arrivé au pouvoir.
Ça va durer longtemps. Les Canadiens doivent se serrer la ceinture, là.
J'espère qu'on va pouvoir réussir. Et nous sommes là. Mon message pour M. Carney, on est là pour travailler avec vous afin d'obtenir le meilleur deal possible avec les Américains. Il faut mettre la partisanerie à côté et mettre le Canada d'abord. This nice lady here.
First Nations chiefs declared about an hour ago a First Nations-wide state of emergency for the toxic drug crisis, and they're proposing a new law that would hold criminally responsible people who sell drugs to community members where they end up dying because they're laced 15 years in prison. Would you support something like that?
Yes, I would support that 100%. And I think it is appalling that this Liberal government has unleashed such a horrific drug crisis, not just on the general Canadian population, but it has hit First Nations people particularly hard. And it's really frustrating because all the chiefs that I have talked to have the common sense solution. They want to ban the drugs, lock up the drug dealers, and provide treatment and recovery services to their members. Mr. Carney and Trudeau have taken the exact opposite approach. They basically legalize these drugs. They allow soft penalties. They've reduced the penalties for the dealers who spread this poison in our streets. And I would go even further. I think there should be life sentences for anyone caught marketing or producing more than 40 milligrams. That is enough to kill 20 people. 20 people with 40 milligrams. These are mass murderers. They should be locked up. We should lock them up and throw away the key. And we should provide compassionate treatment to get the victims off these drugs.
On canola, Scott Moe had said yesterday that if it was up to him, Saskatchewan would remove the tariffs on EVs from Chinese EVs in hope that China might remove tariffs on the canola sector. If it was up to you, would you do the same thing?
No, I don't believe that is the right way to go. I think that, first of all, China wants these electric vehicles to be roving surveillance operations on our streets. And in 10 years, God forbid, there's a conflict, and then there's millions of those vehicles surveilling our population in our streets. That would be a strategic problem for our country. So I respect Scott Moe. He's a great premier. I just respectfully disagree with this point. What I would do instead is I would cancel the $1 billion loan the Liberals are giving under Mark Carney to buy Chinese-made ships. I would say to the dictators in Beijing, you are not going to be selling $1 billion of ships to our country when you are unlawfully and unfairly targeting our canola producers with tariffs.
Selon vous, est-ce que c'est une décision politique aujourd'hui? Vous aviez une campagne de prévue là-dessus pour la rentrée, puis en même temps, est-ce que ça vient aussi vous couper un peu l'herbe sous le pied?
Oui, les conservateurs ont encore gagné un débat sur un enjeu. On a gagné le débat. Et chaque fois, c'est le même. Peut-être on devrait commencer à se souvenir du fait que c'est les mêmes étapes. Poilievre dit quelque chose. Tout le monde capote en disant que c'est tout arrageux ce que Poilievre dit. Puis, quelques mois ou quelques années plus tard, on dit OK, peut-être Poilievre avait raison. Et c'est ça qui arrive maintenant encore. On était entre la taxe carbone, M. Carney était pour, mais il avait besoin de faire volte-face. On a fait les mêmes arguments sur l'inflation, la criminalité, les drogues et maintenant l'immigration. Et les libéraux vont être forcés de faire volte-face plus tard. Donc, M. Carney était en train de perdre le débat sur l'interdiction des voitures de gaz. Et c'est pour ça qu'il a fait soudainement volte-face quelques jours avant le retour du Parlement. Mais à un moment donné, je pense que les Canadiens vont décider qu'ils veulent quelqu'un qui parle vrai dès le début.
Mais vous voulez l'éliminer complètement, lui, il faut juste le suspendre.
How do you think that Canada should lower emissions from transportation, if not through EVs or EV rebates?
We should export our clean energy to the world. National Bank showed that if we exported our natural gas to supply India with half of its future electricity needs, it would displace 2.5 billion tons of greenhouse gases, which is equal to the 3 years of emissions of the entire Canadian economy. So my approach for Mr. Carney is very different. He believes in energy poverty. I believe in energy abundance. He believes in taxing energy. I believe in unleashing energy. He believes in raising costs. I believe in bringing them down. And that is a big debate we're going to have, and I believe that Canadians will choose wisely.
How would you support canola producers in Canada if you're not going to ban the
Well,
Chinese EVs?
as I said, we should punish the regime in Beijing by canceling the billion-dollar loan for the ships that the Liberals want to buy from China. And secondly, we are collecting tariffs from China. Some of those tariffs should be flowed back to the canola producers to help them with the price drop that has resulted from the Chinese tariffs.
Les biocarburants dont M. Carney parle pour aider les agriculteurs du canola, c'est une bonne idée, ça?
Mais il propose une nouvelle taxe carbone. Le taxe carbone de 17 sous qui va appliquer d'ici 2030. Et ça va nuire aux agriculteurs. Après tout, les agriculteurs utilisent beaucoup d'essence et diesel. Donc, mettons une nouvelle taxe sur le dos des consommateurs. C'est une mauvaise idée et c'est encore une promesse brisée de Mark Carney.
What do you make of your ban in Quebec? Are you for or against it?
I haven't seen the proposal, so I'm looking forward to studying it.
Êtes-vous d'accord avec l'idée de bannir les prières en public?
Encore, je vais regarder la proposition avant de la commenter.
Ethical. Are you in favor or against banning prayer in public? Just
I'm going to read the bill because the risk I have in answering the way that you have worded it is that the way you're characterizing it might not be the way the bill is written. So I will have to read the bill and figure out what it is before I take a position, which is a wise approach always. Thank you very much. Great to see you all. All the best.